before we begin that, Saket sir, can you tell us about your journey? Like, why do you think uh, your experience with LinkedIn has had a like big impact on your life?
Sure. I think it's a very qualified kind of impact, which is like I can actually quantify what it has changed in my life, right? In terms of numbers, in terms of everything, the career trajectory that I've had. So I will just throw out one thing, and then obviously when we'll go into the details, we'll talk about multiple small little things that contributed to this whole bigger success as I see it, right? Like in terms of using LinkedIn for good career opportunities. So August 2014 is I don't know when I created the LinkedIn profile. I actually don't remember, but suddenly one day I was working in Music Man in Bangalore, and I get a ping on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn message. She just sent a random message saying that, hey, I looked at your profile, looks interesting, and would you be interested in talking about this opportunity that we have in our Facebook Hyderabad office? I think um, the first reaction to that was like, it must be a spam, right? Because, and I'll just wait for when she asks for money. I think that was my first reaction, because first of all, I've been only working for 1.5 years, right? Like in Music, and I had never thought like that people like me would work for companies like Facebook and Google and so on and so forth. Also, I don't have higher degree, like only BTech, like normal. Most of the folks that I know, and I think opportunities like this, they don't show up that often, right? So you don't really know if this is actually a possibility. But then I was like, okay, I'll go with the flow. Whatever she asks, I'll provide her. And the moment she asks for money, that's when I cut it off, right? I think so. I ended up giving her my CV. So August 14th, this whole thing started, and I ended up joining Facebook on November 14th. In their Hyderabad office. Obviously, there was a long journey of like interviewing and so on and so forth. And the things that has happened after that in my life in general, right? Like gaining financial stability, working for a brand which is recognized throughout the world, coming to Bay Area, coming to US for the first time, actually going outside of India for the first time, getting my passport. So there's a bunch of things that happened because I ended up getting this opportunity. So I would say it has had immense impact on the person that I am today, the kind of things that I've been able to experience, and the kind of people that I've been able to support on all those things that actually matter to me. It has really significant impact. So yeah, that's like a quick clear of how it has changed my life. But then we'll go into the details and stuff.
I'd ask you a question on that. तो हमारे जिस जो listeners हैं वो सोच रहे हैं, they might think कि यार मतलब तुम सिर्फ profile से क्या फर्क पड़ता है? Maybe you had a great background and like was it just the profile that got you? Like was your profile different from say like people you graduated with? Why was it your profile that got attention? Maybe it was. Can you talk a bit about that?
Of course. So I think the one of the things that I don't know why, but I have this inclination towards using like network driven products in general, right? So, and this is because I got on internet pretty late compared to all my peers, right? Like मैंने तो like I never used Orkut, right? मैं college में गया, and then people are like, oh, Orkut. I was like, what is this? Like, and so I had this feeling of missing out when I first started to experience like internet, and I was like, okay, I'll use the products that I like to extent, like a little bit higher extent than the other people, right? So उसमें क्या हुआ, I ended up using a bunch of products which are very nascent at that time. So for example, LinkedIn in 2014 was not the most known product, to be honest, right? If you look at the monthly active users, it was not even one. I think it was not even 1/4 of what they have right now, like back then. Second, I in general used a lot of products like this. So Quora is also network driven, where you ask a question, you get an answer, and so on and so forth. You connect with people. Facebook, ho gaya. Anything like which had a network element to it. I was like, okay, I want to be in it. I enjoyed that whole thing, so I ended up creating that. And in terms of, again, if you do something, you do it in a certain way, right? Which is like you take it to the extent where it's actually valuable. So I would fill out like, first I will update my LinkedIn very often, right? So I would have like, what is my recent experience? What are the projects that I'm working on? Be a little bit more technical in the way I write things on the profile, because nothing catches. Like again, you want to differentiate yourself, right? As you said, and one of the differentiation that I had is I talked about when I was a data scientist, what are the things, the model types that I worked on, right? And what ended up happening was that caught the eye of the person who was looking for this role, because she was hiring for a specialist, not a generalist. And she was like, oh, this is exactly what I want. I want someone who knows how to do customer segmentation. I want someone who knows kind of how to do a stratified sampling and so on and so forth. So I think those are the things that kind of made my profile a little bit pop out compared to all the peers that. And this is my assumption, right? Like
Yeah,
you,
because,
I'm just.
yeah, so basically that I asked this question because most people that I know who have a LinkedIn profile, they're like, हम यहाँ काम करते हैं, यहाँ काम करते हैं, हम यहाँ काम करते हैं. Basically, that is it. There is, and maybe like they talk about their team a bit, but only a little bit. So, like, were you like actively writing articles and posting them? Like, what? So when you said that you talk about this user segmentation and all those things, वो किस तरीके से किया?
Sure. So I think this is probably a good time for me to kind of start referencing the doc because a lot of these is kind of covered in the document. Okay, as just in general, I think there are distinct bucket of things that you can kind of use LinkedIn for, right? The first one that comes to mind for a lot of people, and obviously for me as well, is the job opportunity. People who can't see the screen is basically I'm basically presenting a like a collage of all the messages that I am kind of thankful to get on LinkedIn about people reaching out for different PM roles and TikTok, Uber, whatever, right? Like it's a very good way for recruiters to kind of reach out to the candidates that make sense for the profile based on the experience that you kind of write. And just below that, like I have a screenshot of the first message that I got from the Facebook HR on August 18th, 2014, which basically changed my life. And she's basically just asking like, hey, give me your resume and let's take it from there. In terms of getting the value out of LinkedIn, this is the first stage, right? Where if you want to work for a big company, if you want to work for a company which you have always kind of dreamt of, this is one of the best ways for you to expose your kind of availability to the recruiters. And you would be surprised to know that this is now the main tool, like the primary tool that recruiters use to kind of get more candidates in the pipeline and reach out to them and so on and so forth, right? So that's the first bucket that people kind of use LinkedIn for. Second is hiring people. If you one of the fastest way I've realized, there are different ways to hire people, right? You talk to your HR, they open a rec, then that rec goes out, people apply for it. There's a huge gap between like you willing to hire someone and someone getting hired because there are so many processes involved. The other way to do this is you put a rec out there and then you put a bat signal to your network on LinkedIn, right? So for example, because I started as a data scientist, one of the key qualities of people that I know on LinkedIn is most of them have that quality of like either they have worked with data, they have been data scientists or business analysts and so on and so forth. So for me, if I want to source, let's say data scientist for a role, that's a very fast way for me to kind of put a bat signal out that, hey, I'm hiring for a role. Can you guys like reach out to me and so on and so forth. So hiring people is the second bucket that I kind of get a lot of value out of. And third one, which is building your brand. Right? I think when one of the things that you want to do on any platform is you want to define what is the personality that you want to exert to the world, like and the world being the people who are on LinkedIn. And one of the things that anyone should do is build their own brand. Like let's say when someone say that, hey, I really want to work with a guy who knows how to build products and has done it in past, and also maybe is the original thinker, right? One of the things that people talk about in Bay Area a lot, right? Because they would want to build 0 to 1 product, which means that you need to have like original thinking and so on and so forth. So I also use it to build my own brand. Um, what we are looking at right now is like a few of the articles that I've written, which basically shows that, hey, there's something, these are my thoughts about decision making. This is how I operate on my day-to-day basis. These are the 5 resources that people can use to get better at things, right? So I build my brand by using LinkedIn and the network that I have. And I would say that it's actually very easy compared to all the other platforms where you could be like I try to do the same thing on Twitter, but it didn't work out because it's very fragmented, like the audiences of all types. But on LinkedIn you have people who are basically motivated to do better in their career, and that's why it went really, really well. And one of the successes that I had, and Ankita, you already know about this, I wrote this article about a lot of people in my family, they're getting into the corporate world for the first time, and they were looking for some kind of guidance, and I wrote something for them, and then they were like, it will probably a good idea to kind of open this out on LinkedIn as well. And that post ended up trending on LinkedIn, which I'm super proud of because obviously it has not happened before to me. So yeah, you also build your brand, and I think LinkedIn gives you that very unique audience that can basically be super valuable in long term. And one of the things I would say is, I remember having a conversation with one of the HRs, and they were like, "Oh, I read your piece on like future of watch industry. That's the first article that I wrote on LinkedIn." And she was like, "I really liked it." And I was like, that makes sense, right? Like, you have a bunch of these things going on in your profile, and basically they are there for life, and people can basically go and see like how you think, and you can also communicate that kind of silently, right? Like, you don't have to like throw it in their face. They can go and check on your profile all the articles you have written, all the people that you have helped, all the recommendations that you have from other people, and so on and so forth. So these are the three main buckets. So just to repeat: job opportunity, I think it's the best platform to get more job opportunities open to you. Second, hiring people. If you're a hiring manager, it becomes super easy. Third, like, you can also build your personal brand on LinkedIn, which will help you out in long term. So these are three things that I'll basically touch on. Any questions on this before we move to some of the profile creation?
Hi, Sakit sir. Just one question here since I joined it. Can you tell me, like, what is your motivation to build a profile at this stage? Like, you are not looking for a job really. What is your objective when you post on LinkedIn? Uh, like, what is your motivation really?
That's a really good question, right? Motivation is building the brand, because I feel like if you try to build your brand the moment you actually try to search for a job, that's not going to work, right? Because you have to build it over a period of time. And that's what I do, which is write original thoughts that I have, or some of the things that I have seen work well in my own organization or in my own career. So
You are basically putting up your ideas and you want to get into the sort of a limelight. This person has these kind of logical set of thinking, yeah, jo bhi, has a clear sense of thought process, and you want to reach out to the audience just at this point of time to just open up maybe opportunities way down the line. जिसका कोई use case शायद कभी और connections build हो सकते हैं. Somebody might look to start a really hot startup, so might want to get back to you. I mean, that's just one thing really, but it could be anything really. Somebody might just hire you, or like want you as a freelance consultant, or just totally. So is that some sort of like a by brand? Is that something that you're looking for?
Again, really good question, right? I think the way I think about brand is there's let me take a step back and define. There's something called persona and platform. I think in each platform that you're live in, right? So it could be Facebook, Google, Instagram. Like, you have to create, not Google because it's not a network, right? Like, but the LinkedIn's of the world, the Quoras of the world, Mediums of the world, where you can define a persona for yourself, and the things that you do will basically reinforce that persona, right? So the persona that I have, let's say a person can have on IG is like, I'm a I'm a person who travels a lot and clicks like really good photos, but at the core, the persona is basically, this guy is really good at creating aesthetically beautiful looking posts, right? And you can utilize that in multiple ways down the line, but you don't really think about that in that moment. You just create that opportunity right now, and later there are multiple things that could happen with it, right? Another thing could be, there are a lot of people who post about, like, let's say Sri Ram on Facebook, right? And they're creating a persona where I'm a really religious person. I have my thoughts and beliefs in Hindu traditions and so on and so forth. Maybe they are not thinking, but maybe down the line, let's say if RSS wants to recruit someone, right, who's really strong believer in Ram and also is technical, they'll probably like try to find that kind of person, right? It becomes easier in terms of discovery. When I define my persona, I don't know if you're able to look at the doc that I'm sharing, but I've written something which says persona definition, right? What is the persona that I want to exert to the outside world in this moment, which is, I create value for my network by tapping into my own experiences, and I also want to put out my own original thoughts, right? What that essentially means is, and there are multiple ways I can utilize this down the line, and some of the things that you actually already talked about, which is like, maybe someone reads this and they think that, oh, excuse me, this guy is like really original thinker. I'm working on my startup. I would love to have this guy on my team, right? Like, that could be one way to think about it. So it's basically, I create my brand or persona right now, but there are multiple ways you can capitalize on it. And not everything is a monetary reward. Some of it could be like your intrinsic, the things that gives you happiness. And for me, like mentoring people, providing value, creating value for my network is one of those things.
Cool.
Yeah, and one last example I'll give, which is more tactical, is I wrote something, and this is not even about LinkedIn. This is about Quora. I wrote a really good answer, and the reason I say really good answer because like the KPIs of like upwards and all basically tell that story, and someone about like how to become a good business analyst, right? And someone here in Bay Area basically saw that post, reached out to me that hey, if you could design a course curriculum for the startup that I have, which is also getting into this education of how to become a business analyst, that'd be great. We'll pay you XYZ. I ended up doing it. I ended up earning some money as well from them. So those are the things that could happen. I'll link that link some of those screenshots as well in the doc if that makes sense. I'll basically end up uh, end with like giving some very tactical advice on how to go about like building a good profile as well as how to build your own brand or how to basically tap into more opportunities for further down the line, right? First one is I think there are some basics that you need to cover, right? Like there's something called an all-star profile. I think Kridath and I talked about this in the beginning of this call. Is like there are basic elements that you need to have in place that will make your profile kind of pop up when a recruiter searches for like the person that they want to hire, right? Some of those basics are have a profile picture. I know a lot more people than than I would like who have no profile pictures on LinkedIn. Whether you are a CEO or whether like we are in a pretty good job right now. I'm not even looking for a change, but making sure my profile looks good is just it's not gonna hurt. It's only gonna benefit, right? So making sure you have a good profile picture, you write your experiences that you have had. I think while you are writing this, the way I would go about it, and which is the way I write my own experience on LinkedIn, is like you go and write some of the tactical stuff that you have done, not just overarching theme of like, hey, I build products like that. That is not that's not going to help a recruiter, right? You write that, hey, I have built a B2B product that, let's say for me, a lot of agencies use on monthly basis. So that would be a better way to communicate, because that will have second level of detail that basically is what the recruiter is looking for when they are kind of looking for a product manager or someone for that kind of role. So go a little bit deeper than just overarching themes. In terms of skills, one of the ways recruiters search for people for the role that they have open is they have filters where they can put like people who know SQL, people who know Excel, people who know Microsoft PowerPoint, or like C++ or JavaScript. And so you must define those things as parameters in your when you are like creating your profile, so that when they are searching for and they're putting all these kind of elements in place in those filters, your profile pops up as one of those people. And other thing to note down on skills pieces, you should also try, I mean, you shouldn't try, but if you have a good network of people who have the same kind of skill set, and if they have promoted you, that also basically gives you a better score when the ranking is done for filtering for the profiles. Write a good summary in a sense that it should catch the attention of the people who are kind of reading it. I've seen some of the summaries on LinkedIn profile, which is like, I'm a really motivated person who wants to work on really good things. I think that kind of summary is not going to help. Everyone is motivated, right? Like in general, like no one goes out and says that, hey, I'm an unmotivated person who only works on things that they don't like. I think that'd be pretty random. Industry and location, I think this is a qualifier in terms of not a lot of people want to hire people who are, let's say, outside of their country or outside of their industry. I think these barriers are getting lower as we move into this new world of COVID, but there's definitely value in defining them properly. Education, I think not only is just the education that you have had in terms of the college that you went to, but the courses that you do. I think if you go to my profile, you'll see like every few months I add a new course that I did, and with the certification number and everything, because it just reinforces that this person is always learning. You never know everything, right? So it becomes a good way to kind of communicate that out, that hey, I'm not just saying in my summary that I'm a good learner, but here are all the certifications that I'm doing on an ongoing basis. The last second last is connections. I think try to have a, like, if you are, let's say, if you envision your career as a product manager down the line, then your career should be, or your connection should be kind of filled with those kind of people, right? Who are doing well in that scenario. Otherwise, you would not get that much value out. So that's where you want to get the value from the connections. And again, also have connections from your past, which is like for me, all the data scientist people that I know from my previous roles and previous companies, because then I can tap in them for hiring opportunities or something that I'm working on if I just want to bounce out ideas and stuff. And the last one is recommendation. I actually don't know how much this works or not, but I was reading online that recommendations also work, which I have to do. That's an action item for me. I have no recommendations and I have not provided any recommendations to anyone. But I think that having that will basically help if you have someone like a VP of engineering from, let's say, Google write a recommendation for you. That would be pretty sweet in from the eyes of a recruiter. So here's a few things I would do. One tactical thing which I learned quite late, I would say, is the profile picture piece, and the thing that Kritar just talked about in the beginning of this call. If you missed that out, which is making things public, right? By default, I don't know why there are a lot of settings which are only reserved for your connections. So I had my profile picture set up as only for connections, and if you search for it, and if you land on my LinkedIn profile, and if you're not in my connections, it'll basically show a blank, like cookie cutter photo, right? Like not my actual photo. And like I was having a conversation with someone, I sent them a link and they were like, is this you? I can't see the photo. I'm like, what do you mean? I have a really good photo up on the LinkedIn site, but they were like, no, I can't see it. And then I went and saw that it was only gated for people who are in my connection, not for everyone. Yeah, so some of these things I think you can do a quick audit to see like what the things that should be public, right? Like the few things that we listed, which is like your profile, your experience, skills, summary, industry, location. These things should be public. Otherwise, how would someone search for it, right? So this is kind of where I want to end. But I would say like in general, LinkedIn has a lot of value in the way it's built, except from its newsfeed. Right? I do not find any value in the newsfeed. I think it's also honest to call out the things that don't work, right? I think on LinkedIn, the things that work is basically idea behind connections and networking and hiring people or like getting hired and like getting in front of recruiters and stuff. But there also is a lot of noise, which is the newsfeed is not really that good. If I scroll down my newsfeed, I'm like, what is this? Why are you talking about like someone like doing something totally random, right? Right, outside of the what this platform is meant for. So take what makes sense to you, leave everything else. And I think the things that made sense to me is like networking with awesome people, getting myself in front of job opportunities, hiring really good people, hiring them really fast. And the last one, which is the more long-term play, is building your own brand.